If you follow me on Instagram, you may remember one day last week I posted to my stories that I was working on a design using metallic threads, and what a bitch it was to work with them. Anyway, quite a few people messaged me and said that they too found it really difficult and it was something they struggled with. So I've gone away, flicked through all my old cross stitch books that I collect from charity shops, and I've scoured YouTube and various websites, and I found that there are absolutely loads of different ways to do it. So I tried and tested a few, and I've come up with one particular technique that I found was the least stressful and led to the least amount of swearing from me. So I'm going to share that with you today. I will at some point make a video with some of the other techniques that I've come across, but for now I just think, so we can all get started and get these things all sparkly and looking nice in time for Christmas, I'll just take you through the one that I found the easiest. Okay, so in this video I'm going to be using DMC metallic threads here. I'm not affiliated, I don't get paid for promoting their brand. It's just one I use. They're easy to come by, lots of colours, and they tend to be used by a lot of designers in their kits and patterns as well. And what I do like about these ones is that the colours match perfectly with the just the plain cotton 6-stranded that you would use. So obviously this would match with your Christmas green 699, which is great because if you don't want to do the whole piece in metallic threads, you know that you're still going to get a really good colour match with that. You may have noticed that this is fraying quite badly, and that didn't take very long to happen, literally the time that it took me to get from the craft shop home. So do advise as quickly as you can to get them wound onto a bobbin, just to make sure that they don't all get tangled and ruined, because it can happen very quickly. Okay, so to show you what I mean by the threads snagging and fraying and pulling, this is what's happened to this thread just in the short time and the small amount of handling it takes to thread the needle and knot it. At this end, as soon as you start stitching, it starts to go. As you can see, that's separating. That was one strand, and it's already now separated into 3 pieces. And it can stretch a bit as well. And then at the other end, where you have the knot, obviously I wouldn't leave it as untidy as that. That's on the back of it. I'll just show you. And then as you're pulling your needle through, all these little pieces get caught on it and pull the thread and make it go all horrible and messy and unusable, really. So if you haven't got to the stage in your cross stitch journey where you are already using loop stitches or things like that, you're probably loop knots, you're probably still using this knot, which is fine. I still use it, but not for metallic threads. So I'm going to show you a different way to do it. So we're going to take our thread conditioner here, and we're just going to pop that on there. Just hold that gently in place. You don't need to press down with your thumb, and just gently pull that through so that it gets just a very light coating. And I do it again. Now you don't want to go mad with it, otherwise it can dull the sparkle in the thread, and also for lighter colours it can discolour them slightly, and also you're going to get, it's going to build up onto the fabric on your Aida as well, and it's just going to get really grubby. So we're going to thread the needle, we're going to fold it over and make a loop like this. And I would recommend using a needle slightly larger than you would normally use. This helps to just stretch the holes in the Aida a little bit more, so that it's easier for the thread to pass through and with less rubbing against all the other threads and snagging. So we just fold that over, pop that through, and then with this loop, we're going to pull those tail ends through like that. And there's a very, very slight knot. But I find that having it like that, it doesn't seem to fray as much. I don't know if when we have the needle at the other end like this, like I showed you earlier, and it's kind of moving up and down, or it's where there's a lot of stress on it. I don't know, but it just seems to, I don't seem to have the problems that I have doing it like this. Okay, now we're not going to tie a knot. I'll show you why. We're going to take our Aida here and come up through the first hole. And we don't want to pull that right the way through. We want to leave a little bit there. Just hold that in place with your finger. Come back over. Go down through that hole there. And then we're not going to pull that tight. We're going to fold, turn it over again. And those little tail bits are then going to be tightened in that loop, and that anchors that in place. Now we're not going to cut that off yet, because we're going to do a few more stitches to really hold that properly in place. So I do advise just taking your time so that you can get the threads lying nice and flat and not twisted. And you can see there, as that's just gone through on its own, although there is one little fibre that's not anchored. So just pop that. Making right dog's dinner with this. Okay, and I would do probably 3 or 4. So just, that's going over again, holding it nice and tight in place. And just do a last one there, make sure that that's for all those fibres, because you don't want any left behind. They may only be small, but they can do make a lot of mess. Okay, so you may have noticed as well that I'm doing complete stitches. I'm completing each stitch before moving on to the next one, whereas normally if I'm doing a row, I would do all in the half stitches one direction and then come back and go back over them. But I find that the thread tends to tangle and twist a lot more, so it's a good idea, if you feel the thread tangling at all, just let it dangle and it'll untangle itself, it'll untwist, and then you can carry on. Because if it's too twisted, the threads don't lay nice and flat. So as I say, just take your time. And then when you get to the point where you either need to get another piece of thread because you've got to the end, or you're going to be changing colour or moving to another part of the design, and you want to cast off, so that's knitting, isn't it? But anyway, what we do is then you just go back underneath a couple of stitches like that and pull. So, and cut these little ends off, and that bit, and that's really nice and neat, and there's nothing there, not like how I showed you earlier with this mess, for things to get caught on. And that really does make a lot of difference. It really does. And as I say, that's called a buried thread or a quilter's knot. So that's the end for this video. I'm going to make another one just to show you some other techniques that I came across that, you know, it's personal preference. There are as many different ways of doing this as there are tutorials and cross stitches out there. I may have got this wrong. I'm not a member of any Stitchers Guild or anything like that. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. This is just a way that I found worked for me, and if it can work for you too and mean that you can make some really nice designs using metallic threads, well, I'm all for that. Okay, bye bye.